The notification sound pierced through the silence of my cramped studio apartment at 2:47 a.m. Another Instagram alert. I almost ignored it, but something made me reach for my phone. The screen lit up my face in the dark, and there it was. A post from my sister Victoria with over 15,000 likes and climbing. The photo showed me from last Christmas, wearing a thrift store sweater, holding a paper plate at our family gathering. But it was the caption that made my blood freeze. When your 32-year-old sister still can't afford real plates, LOL, you're a broke loser. Sister, you're family shame, you're get your life together. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The comments were brutal. Strangers dissecting my life, my choices, my worth. People I'd never met called me pathetic, a failure, an embarrassment. Victoria had tagged our entire extended family, my old college friends, even my high school classmates. She'd made my poverty a public spectacle for her 200,000 followers to mock. But here's what Victoria didn't know as she basked in her viral moment. 3 months later, TechCrunch would run a front-page story about my AI startup reaching a $50 million valuation. And 6 months after that humiliating post, she'd be standing outside my new Silicon Valley office, tears streaming down her face, begging me to take her back into my life. Let me tell you how the girl everyone called a broke loser built an empire, while her perfect sister watched her world crumble. I'm Jasmine Chen, and this is how I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who end up needing you the most. December 23rd, 2023. The smell of cinnamon and pine filled our childhood home in suburban Denver, the same 2-story colonial, where Victoria and I had grown up sharing everything: toys, clothes, dreams. But sharing had become a foreign concept between us somewhere along the way. I pulled into the driveway in my beat-up 2015 Honda Civic, its paint faded and a small dent on the passenger side from when I'd backed into a parking meter 6 months ago. I couldn't afford to fix it, not with my student loans, rent, and the minimal savings I was desperately trying to preserve for my startup idea. The contrast was immediate and painful. Victoria's gleaming white Tesla Model S sat in the spot where my dad used to park his old pickup truck. Walking up the familiar stone pathway, I could hear laughter spilling from the windows. Through the bay window, I caught glimpses of my family gathered around the dining room table. My parents, my Aunt Susan and Uncle Mark, my cousins, and of course, Victoria. She was animated, gesturing with her hands as she told some story that had everyone captivated. She wore a designer red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her honey blonde hair styled in perfect waves that caught the chandelier light. I looked down at my own outfit: black pants from Target, a cream sweater I'd found at Goodwill but had convinced myself looked expensive, and my one pair of nice boots that were starting to show wear at the heels. The gift bag in my hand suddenly felt inadequate. I'd spent an hour at the dollar store, carefully selecting items and arranging them to look thoughtful: specialty tea bags, nice-smelling soap, a small succulent in a painted pot. It was all I could afford. Mom opened the door before I could knock, enveloping me in her familiar lavender-scented hug. "Jasmine, we were starting to worry you'd gotten lost." "Just work traffic," I lied. I'd actually been sitting in my car for 20 minutes, gathering the courage to face another family gathering where I felt like the charity case. The warmth of the house embraced me as I stepped inside. Everything looked exactly the same as when Victoria and I were kids, except now there were subtle signs of prosperity that Mom and Dad had gained since Victoria's career took off. A new smart TV mounted on the wall, updated kitchen appliances, visible through the archway, fresh paint that made everything look crisp and well-maintained. "There she is!" Dad's voice boomed from the living room. He appeared with his arms outstretched, his graying beard neatly trimmed, wearing a sweater I'd never seen before. "How's our little tech genius?" The phrase stung a bit because it felt patronizing now, like he was humoring my computer hobby, while Victoria had real success to show for her life. But I smiled and hugged him anyway, breathing in his familiar cologne mixed with the woodsy scent that always clung to his flannel shirts. "Jasmine!" Victoria's voice rang out as she appeared in the hallway, click-clacking toward us in heels that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was broad and seemed genuine, but I'd learned to read the subtle signs. The way her eyes didn't quite crinkle at the corners, the slight tension in her shoulders that suggested performance rather than authentic joy. She pulled me into a hug that felt like a photo opportunity, the kind where you're pressed together but not really connecting. "You look comfortable," she said, stepping back to assess my outfit with a quick up-and-down glance that I pretended not to notice. "Thanks. You look amazing as always." And she did. Victoria had always been the pretty one, the popular one, the one who seemed to effortlessly glide through life while I struggled with everything from social interactions to keeping my hair looking decent in humid weather. "Come on. Everyone's dying to hear about your little computer project," she said, linking her arm through mine and guiding me toward the dining room. Little computer project. There it was, the casual dismissal wrapped in sisterly enthusiasm. Victoria had perfected this technique over the years, the art of supporting me while simultaneously diminishing what I was doing. It was subtle enough that calling it out would make me look petty and oversensitive. The dining room buzzed with conversation as we entered. Aunt Susan immediately stood up to hug me, her silver jewelry jingling softly. "Jasmine, Victoria was just telling us about her promotion, regional marketing director for the entire Western Division. Can you believe it?" I glanced at Victoria, who was beaming with that practiced smile she'd perfected for professional headshots and Instagram posts. "That's incredible, Vic. Congratulations. Sit. Uncle Mark gestured to the empty chair between him and my teenage cousin Riley. "We want to hear about this business you're starting. Victoria mentioned you're doing something with artificial intelligence?" The way he said artificial intelligence made it sound like I'd claimed I was building a rocket ship in my garage. I took a breath, settling into the chair and accepting the plate of ham and mashed potatoes that Mom had prepared for me. "I'm developing an AI-powered platform that helps small businesses optimize their customer service responses," I began, trying to strike the right balance between accessible and professional. It analyzes customer inquiries and generates personalized responses that maintain the business owner's authentic voice while being more efficient than... "So like a chatbot?" Riley interrupted, looking up from her phone. "Kind of, but more sophisticated. It learns the specific tone and style of each business, so responses don't sound robotic or generic. The goal is to help small business owners compete with larger companies that have full customer service teams." Victoria laughed, a light tinkling sound that somehow managed to deflate the air in the room. "Leave it to Jasmine to complicate a simple concept. It's basically an automated customer service system, right? Like when you call your bank and get the computer's voice?" "Not exactly," I started, but Dad was already nodding along with Victoria's explanation. "Oh, like those things that answer the phone when you call tech support," he said. "Pretty clever. Are people actually buying these things?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I felt my cheeks warm as I realized everyone was staring at me, waiting for me to defend my life choices. The honest answer was that I was still in development, still working 16-hour days while freelancing as a web developer to pay my bills, still eating ramen 4 nights a week so I could afford server costs and software licenses. "It's still in the development phase," I said carefully. "I'm working with a few beta clients to refine the technology before launching." "Beta clients," Victoria repeated, and something in her tone made the words sound like imaginary friends. "How exciting! And you're doing this all by yourself?" "For now, yes. Bootstrap funding until I can demonstrate market validation." Aunt Susan looked confused. "Bootstrap funding? It means she's using her own money instead of getting investors," Victoria explained with the patient tone of someone translating for children. "Which is admirable, really. Not everyone can convince strangers to give them money for unproven ideas. There was something sharp hidden in that comment, a blade wrapped in silk. Victoria had always been skilled at this, saying things that sounded supportive on the surface but carried an undertone that made you question yourself. Speaking of which, Mom said, turning to Victoria, "Tell everyone about your new apartment." Victoria's face lit up with genuine excitement for the first time that evening. "Oh my gosh, you guys have to see the pictures." She pulled out her phone, swiping to what was clearly a prepared gallery of professionally shot interior photos. It's a 2-bedroom penthouse in Lodo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the mountains. And the kitchen. She turned the phone toward the table, showing gleaming marble countertops and stainless steel appliances that looked like they belonged in a magazine. 2 bedrooms? Uncle Mark whistled. In downtown Denver? That must cost a fortune. It's an investment, Victoria said with a casual shrug that didn't quite hide her pride. The building has a concierge, gym, and rooftop pool. It's the kind of place where you can really network, you know? My boss lives 3 floors up. I stared at the photos on her phone screen, each one more stunning than the last. The living room had a white leather sectional that probably cost more than I'd made in the past 6 months. The bedroom had a walk-in closet bigger than my entire studio apartment. The bathroom looked like a spa, with a soaking tub positioned perfectly to frame the mountain view. The best part, Victoria continued, now fully in her element, is the smart home integration. Everything's controlled by an app. Lighting, temperature, security, even the window shades. I can start my coffee, make her from bed in the morning. That's amazing, honey, Mom said, her voice filled with the kind of pride that used to be reserved for my academic achievements back when I was the one making the family proud. You've worked so hard for this. And she had worked hard. Victoria had always been driven, always been ambitious. In high school, she was student body president and homecoming queen. In college, she double majored in marketing and communications while maintaining a 3.8 GPA and leading 3 different student organizations. After graduation, she'd climbed the corporate ladder with the same determination she'd brought to everything else. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The difference was that Victoria's hard work had always been visible, measurable, socially acceptable. She got promotions, salary increases, corner offices, company cars. My hard work looked like staying up until 3 a.m. debugging code, surviving, on coffee and determination, turning down social invitations because I couldn't afford them and needed to work anyway. Jasmine's working hard too, Mom added, almost as an afterthought. Living so simply while she focuses on her business. Simply. That was one way to put it. Another way would be to say I was one unexpected expense away from having to move back in with my parents at age 32. It's inspiring, really, Victoria said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I don't know how you do it, living on so little. I would be so stressed. But you make it look easy. Her hand was soft and warm, with perfectly manicured nails painted. In a subtle nude shade that probably cost more than my monthly phone bill. My own nails were short and unpolished, my hands showing the wear of someone who did their own dishes, laundry, and car maintenance. I have everything I need, I said. And it wasn't entirely a lie. I had a roof over my head, food in my tiny refrigerator, and a dream I was willing to sacrifice everything for. That's such a healthy perspective, Aunt Susan chimed in. Material. Things really don't matter in the end. Easy to say when you weren't choosing between buying groceries and paying for cloud storage for your application. The conversation shifted to other topics. Riley's upcoming senior year, Uncle Mark's new job, Mom's plans to redecorate the guest bathroom. I participated when directly addressed, but mostly listened, feeling like an observer in my own family. Victoria dominated the conversation effortlessly, sharing stories from her work trips to Los Angeles and Phoenix, describing restaurants I'd never heard of, and experiences that seemed to belong to a different universe. When it came time for gifts, the disparity became even more apparent. Victoria had bought our parents a weekend getaway to a mountain resort. Aunt Susan and Uncle Mark received a gift card to their favorite steakhouse. Riley got the latest iPhone case and wireless earbuds. Everything was wrapped in expensive paper with silk ribbons and looked like it had been assembled by a professional gift service. My dollar store gifts looked pathetic by comparison, but my family graciously accepted them with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for children's handmade crafts. "How thoughtful," Mom said, admiring the succulent. "I'll put this in the kitchen window." Victoria's gift to me was a spa gift card. "For when you need to treat yourself," she said with a smile. That didn't reach her eyes. It was worth more than I'd spent on everyone else combined, which made it feel less like a gift and more like charity. After dinner, while the adults were having coffee, and Victoria was showing more photos from her recent work conference in San Diego, I excused myself to use the bathroom. I needed a moment alone, away from the constant reminder of how different our lives had become. The upstairs bathroom was exactly as I remembered it. The same mint green tiles, the same shower curtain, with tiny flowers, the same medicine cabinet mirror that had reflected my face through adolescence and teenage years. I stared at myself now, seeing exhaustion in my eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. The stress of financial uncertainty, of working 18-hour days, of believing in something that everyone else saw as a pipe dream, was starting to show. I could hear Victoria's laugh floating up from downstairs, bright and confident. She was probably sharing another story about her glamorous life. Another experience that emphasized how well she was doing and how far she'd come from our modest childhood. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had shifted to new year's plans. Victoria was describing a party her company was hosting at some exclusive rooftop venue. "You should come, Jasmine," she said when she saw me. "I can get you on the guest list. It might be good for networking." The invitation felt like another form of charity, another way for Victoria to play the role of the successful sister helping out her struggling sibling. "Thanks, but I'll probably be working," I said. "On New Year's Eve?" Dad looked concerned. "Honey, you need to have some fun sometimes." "I am having fun. I love what I do." Victoria's smile became a little tighter. "That's the spirit. Although it might be nice to, celebrate with actual people sometimes instead of just your computer." The comment stung because it was partially true. My social life had dwindled to almost nothing over the past year as I'd poured everything into my startup. But it wasn't because I preferred computers to people. It was because I was making sacrifices Victoria had never had to make, working towards something she couldn't understand. The evening wound down with more hugs, more promises to stay in touch, more polite exchanges that felt increasingly hollow. As I gathered my coat and keys, Victoria walked me to the door. "Hey," she said, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "I hope you know I'm proud of you. What you're doing takes real courage. I could never give up everything comfortable and stable to chase a dream like that." It was probably meant to be supportive, but it felt like another subtle reminder of our different circumstances. Victoria didn't have to give up comfort and stability because she'd never left them. She'd built her success within existing systems, following proven paths, making safe choices that led to predictable rewards. "Thanks," I said, not sure what else to add. "And if you ever need anything..." She trailed off, leaving the offer vague enough to sound generous without committing to anything specific. I hugged her goodbye and walked to my car, the cold December air biting at my face. As I drove away from our childhood home, I could see Victoria through the window, already back in the dining room, probably continuing some conversation I'd missed. The warm light spilled onto the snow-covered lawn, and for a moment, I felt like I was looking at a life I used to belong to, but no longer had access to. I didn't know that in 3 hours, Victoria would be uploading that photo of me to Instagram, turning our family Christmas into content for her social media empire. I didn't know that she'd been planning it all evening, choosing the most unflattering angle, crafting the cruelest caption she could think of. All I knew was that I felt more alone than ever, driving through empty streets toward an apartment where I'd spend the rest of the holiday weekend working on code that might change everything, or might amount to nothing. But sometimes the biggest victories come from the deepest loneliness. Sometimes you have to fall completely before you learn how to fly. The notification came at 2:47 a.m. on December 26th. I was still awake, hunched over my laptop at the small desk I'd wedged into the corner of my studio apartment, debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code that controlled how my AI analyzed emotional sentiment in customer messages. The blue light from my screen was the only illumination in the room, casting long shadows across the walls covered in sticky notes, flowcharts, and printed code snippets. My phone buzzed against the wooden surface, and I almost ignored it. Social. Media notifications at this hour were usually spam or random likes from people scrolling through old posts. But something made me reach for it. Maybe the particular urgency of the double buzz that indicated a tag or mention. Instagram. Victoria Chin Chiu Official. Tagged you in a photo. My stomach dropped before I even opened the app. Victoria never tagged me in anything unless it served her purpose somehow. Our social media relationship was practically non-existent. She lived in her world of curated perfection and brand partnerships, while I barely posted anything beyond the occasional sunset or coffee cup photo. The app loaded slowly on my old phone, the spinning wheel mocking me as my internet connection struggled with the late-night bandwidth. When the image finally appeared, I felt the breath leave my lungs. It was me. Unmistakably, humiliating me from yesterday's Christmas dinner. The photo captured me mid-reach across the table, probably going for the salt or trying to help clear dishes. But the angle made me look desperate, grabby. My thrift store sweater hung awkwardly, the overhead lighting cast unflattering shadows under my eyes, and in my hands was one of Mom's paper plates, the nice holiday ones with the gold trim, that she'd bought for dessert. But in the photo, it just looked cheap, but the image was nothing compared to the caption. When your 32-year-old sister still can't afford real plates, LOL, chatter broke loser. Sister, chatter family shame. Get your life together. Char reality check, chatter grow up, chat adulting fails, chat family drama, shacked truth. And sorry not sorry. The hashtags went on, each one a calculated dagger designed for maximum virality and humiliation. Victoria had crafted this post like a marketing campaign, targeting every possible angle to ensure it would spread. My hands trembled as I scrolled down to see the engagement. Posted just 37 minutes ago, it already had 847 likes and 23 comments. I watched the numbers climb in real time. 851 likes, 852, 856. The comments were loading in a steady stream, each notification sound like a small slap. OMG, is this real? Victoria, you are savage for this Elma Ooh. Family roast session activated. Yikes, imagine being 32 and your sister has to call you out like this. Plot twist. She's probably asking Victoria for money right now. This is why I don't go to family events anymore. Victoria bestie, you need to stage an intervention. Some people never learn to adult properly, SMH. Each comment felt like a physical blow. These weren't just strangers mocking me. These were Victoria's followers, people who'd been following our family dynamics through her curated posts for years. They felt entitled to judge my life, my choices, my worth based on a single manipulated moment. I kept scrolling, unable to stop myself even as each new comment made me feel smaller. Someone had already screenshot the post and shared it to their own story with crying, laughing emojis. Another person had quote tweeted it with, "When your successful sister gives you a reality check." The worst part was recognizing some of the names. High school classmates who'd liked Victoria's graduation photos and vacation updates over the years. College friends who'd probably forgotten I existed until this moment reminded them that I was the disappointing Chen sister. Even some extended. Family members had liked the post, cousins and family friends who'd watched me grow up and were now participating in my public humiliation. My phone buzzed again. A direct message from someone I didn't recognize. Saw Victoria's post about you. Maybe it's time to get your shit together? Just saying. Then another. LOL, your sister is iconic for this. And another. Girl, if my sister posted this about me, I would simply disappear from the earth. I set the phone down with shaking hands and stared at my laptop screen, where lines of code blurred together through the tears I was fighting to hold back. This wasn't just a cruel joke between sisters. Victoria had weaponized her social media platform, 200,000 followers who hung on her every word, to publicly destroy me. The calculated nature of it hit me like a freight train. She'd waited until after Christmas, probably to avoid ruining the family gathering, but also to give herself time to choose the perfect photo and craft the most devastating caption. She'd used hashtags designed to maximize reach. She'd posted at a time when her engagement was typically highest. This wasn't a spontaneous moment of sibling frustration. This was a planned attack. My phone rang, startling me out of my paralysis. Mom's name appeared on the screen, and I hesitated before answering. It was almost 3:30 a.m. now. She'd either seen the post or someone had sent it to her. Jasmine? Her voice was tight with worry and what sounded like embarrassment. Honey, I just got a call from your Aunt Susan. She saw Victoria's Instagram post. I know. My voice came out smaller than I intended. What is she thinking? I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I don't understand why she would do something like this. But even as Mom tried to comfort me, I could hear the confusion in her voice. She was genuinely baffled by Victoria's behavior, because Victoria had always been the good daughter, the successful one, the one who made sensible choices and brought pride to the family. This public cruelty didn't fit the narrative they'd all constructed about who Victoria was. Has she always felt this way about me? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Mom was quiet for a long moment. I think Victoria has always struggled with the fact that you're so different from her. She measures success very differently than you do, and maybe she doesn't understand why you're willing to sacrifice so much for something that might not work out. It was a diplomatic answer, but it didn't address the core issue. This wasn't about different definitions of success. This was about Victoria using her platform to humiliate me in front of hundreds of thousands of strangers for entertainment. What do? I asked. I'm going to call her, Mom said firmly. This has gone too far. You're her sister, not some stranger she can mock online for likes. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, watching the notification count continue to climb. 1,247 likes, 67 comments, 23 shares. The post was taking on a life of its own, spreading beyond Victoria's immediate circle into the broader social media ecosystem, where people shared content not because they cared about the people involved, but because they found the drama entertaining. Opened my laptop and tried to focus on my code, but the words swam on the screen. Every few minutes, my phone would buzz with another notification, someone else discovering the post, someone else finding humor in my humiliation. I finally turned off all notifications and put the phone face down on the desk, but I could still feel its presence like a ticking bomb. Around 4:30 a.m., I heard a commotion outside my apartment building. Voices in the parking lot, car doors slamming. For a paranoid moment, I wondered if somehow Victoria's post had attracted people to my actual address. But when I peered through the blinds, it was just my neighbor Jerry coming home from his night shift at the hospital. The mundane reality of the scene, Jerry walking his dog, the automatic sprinklers turning on across the courtyard, the distant hum of early morning traffic, felt surreal against the digital chaos happening on my phone. My real life was exactly the same as it had been 6 hours ago, But my public identity had been transformed into a cautionary tale for social media consumption. I tried to imagine Victoria crafting this post. Had she scrolled through the photos? From Christmas dinner specifically looking for the most unflattering one? Had she workshopped different captions, testing which hashtags would get the most engagement? Had she considered, even for a moment, how this would make me feel? The Victoria I remembered from childhood would never have done something this cruel. That Victoria had defended me when kids at school made fun of my thick glasses. She'd helped me with my math homework and let me borrow her clothes for school dances. She'd cried when I left for college because she said she'd miss having me around. But Victoria had been replaced somewhere along the way by someone who saw everything, including family relationships, as content for her personal brand. This Victoria measured her worth in likes, comments, and follower counts. This Victoria had turned cruelty into engagement strategy. My phone buzzed again despite the disabled notifications, a phone call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then another call from a different unknown number. When I finally checked the voicemails an hour later, they were from strangers who'd somehow found my contact information, wanting to either mock me further or offer unsolicited advice about my life choices. One message stood out. "Hey, this is Marcus from Tech Daily Blog. Saw the viral post about you and wanted to do a story about family dynamics in the startup world. Could really help humanize the struggle of entrepreneurs. Call me back." Someone wanted to turn my humiliation into a news story. The viral post had moved beyond social media entertainment into potential mainstream media coverage. I deleted the voicemail immediately. As the sun began to rise, casting pale yellow light through my blinds, I finally opened Instagram again to see the full scope of the damage. The post now had over 3,000 likes and 156 comments. It had been shared to multiple Facebook groups, screenshotted for Twitter threads, and even reposted on TikTok with someone providing commentary over the image. Victoria had added to her Instagram story since the original post a video of herself getting ready for some morning workout class, looking radiant and unbothered. She'd layered a Taylor Swift song over the video with lyrics about shaking off negativity. The implication was clear. She had no regrets about what she'd done. I scrolled through more comments, torturing myself with each new judgment of my life. Imagine being this much of a disappointment to your family. Victoria is doing the Lord's work calling out deadbeats. Some people need tough love to get their act together. This is what happens when participation trophy generation hits real world. Plot twist: broke sister is probably going to ask Victoria for money to start her business. That last comment hit particularly hard because of how close it was to assumptions I'd been fighting my entire adult life. Everyone expected me to fail. Everyone expected me to eventually come crawling back to ask for help, to admit that my dreams were unrealistic and that I should have chosen the safer path like Victoria. But buried among the cruelty were a few different voices. This is actually really sad. Imagine having your own sister humiliate you publicly like this. Victoria, this ain't it. The family should lift each other up, not tear each other down for content. Yikes, the secondhand embarrassment I'm feeling for how mean this is. Deleting. Someone from your life starts with deleting them from your social media, not putting them on blast. These comments gave me a small spark of hope that not everyone found my humiliation entertaining. But they were vastly outnumbered by the people who seemed to relish in watching someone else's life fall apart in public. I closed the app and stared at my reflection on the black laptop screen. My eyes were red-rimmed from exhaustion and stress. My hair was a mess from running my hands through it, and I was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. I looked exactly like what Victoria had called me, a broke loser who couldn't get her life together. But as I sat there in the growing morning light, surrounded by the evidence of months of 18-hour workdays and impossible dedication to my dream, something began to shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more determined. Victoria had made a choice. She'd chosen to use her platform, her success, and her family connection to publicly humiliate me for entertainment. She'd chosen to reduce years of my struggle and sacrifice to a punchline for her followers. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I opened my laptop and got back to work on my code. But now I wasn't just building an AI platform for small businesses. I was building proof that everything Victoria had said about me was wrong. I was building vindication, and when the time came, when TechCrunch ran their story about my $50 million valuation, when investors were competing to meet with me, when my face was on magazine covers as the next big thing in artificial intelligence, Victoria would understand exactly what kind of mistake she'd made. But first, I had to build something worth proving her wrong about. The sun rose higher, my coffee grew cold, and the notification count continued to climb. But for the first time since opening that devastating post, I smiled. Victoria wanted to make me famous for being a failure. I was going to become famous for being unstoppable. 3 days after Victoria's post went viral, I was sitting in a coffee shop across town, laptop open, trying to focus on fixing a critical bug in my AI's natural language processing, when a stranger approached my table. "Excuse me, are you the broke sister?" I looked up to see a woman in her 20s, holding her phone with Victoria's Instagram post displayed on the screen. My stomach clenched as I realized that Victoria's broke loser sister hashtag had turned me into a recognizable figure. Not for anything I'd accomplished, but for being the subject of public humiliation. "I'm sorry," I said, though I knew exactly what she was referring to. "From Victoria Chen's post. Oh my God, you're like internet famous now. Can I get a selfie?" I closed my laptop and gathered my things, mumbling an excuse about being late for a meeting. As I left the coffee shop, I heard her on the phone. "You'll never guess who I just met. That loser sister Victoria posted about." This wasn't the first time. Over the past 3 days, Victoria's post had generated over 50,000 likes and 800 comments. It had been shared to Reddit's trashy forum, featured in a TikTok compilation of family drama that went too far, and somehow ended up in a Facebook group called Millennial Financial Failures, where people shared stories about relatives who couldn't adult properly. The worst part wasn't just the continued humiliation, it was discovering things about Victoria that I'd never known. That evening, I was deep in a rabbit hole of Victoria's social media presence, something I'd never really explored before. I'd always seen her posts casually when they appeared in my feed, but I'd never systematically gone through her content. What I found made my blood run cold. Victoria hadn't just been successful, she'd been building a personal brand around being the perfect sister with the struggling sibling. Going back through 2 years of her posts, I found subtle references to me that I'd somehow missed. A photo of her at an expensive restaurant. Grateful I can treat myself to nice dinners instead of living on instant ramen like some people I know. Blessed Honda priorities. A picture of her new designer handbag. When you work hard, you can afford nice things. Not everyone understands this concept, apparently. Can't earn your keep. A vacation photo from Cabo. Some people think success just happens. Actually, it requires discipline and smart choices. Work hard first. Delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. Each post had hundreds of comments from followers who clearly knew she was referencing her irresponsible sister. They'd been discussing my life, my choices, my perceived failures for months without me knowing. "Your sister sounds like a hot mess, Victoria. You're so patient with her." Ugh, family members who mooch are the worst. "You're a saint. Victoria, your sister is lucky to have someone successful to look up to. Some people never learn. At least you're setting a good example." Victoria had been monetizing my struggle without me realizing it. Her followers loved the narrative of the responsible sister dealing with the family disappointment. It made them feel superior about their own lives while positioning Victoria as both successful and long-suffering. But the deeper I dug, the more disturbing patterns I found. I discovered a private Facebook group called Chen Family Updates that Victoria had created for extended family members. The description read, "A place to share family news and support each other through various challenges." With a sinking feeling, I created a fake account and requested to join, using the name of a distant cousin Victoria might not immediately recognize. I was accepted within hours. The group had 47 members: aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, even some of Victoria's high school friends who'd become family adjacent over the years. And it was full of updates about me, posts from Victoria over the past year. Update on Jasmine, still refusing to get a real job. Mom's worried sick, but Jasmine insists this business will work out eventually. Prayers appreciated. Family dinner was rough tonight. Jasmine showed up looking like she hasn't eaten in weeks but won't accept help. She's too proud to admit this startup thing isn't working. Had to gently suggest Jasmine might want to consider moving back home. Her apartment is honestly depressing and she's clearly struggling financially. Sometimes tough love is necessary. Jasmine gave everyone dollar store gifts for Christmas. I know we shouldn't judge, but it's hard to watch someone make such poor choices year after year. The comments on these posts were even worse than the public ones. Family members I'd hugged at Christmas, people who'd smiled at me and asked about my business, had been discussing my failures behind my back for months. Aunt Susan, maybe if we all stop enabling her, she'll finally wake up and get serious about her life. Uncle Mark, some people just aren't cut out for business. She should go back to being an employee. My cousin Sarah, Victoria, you're being so supportive. I would have cut off contact by now, TBH. Family friend Mrs. Peterson, this is what happens when parents don't teach proper work ethic. Thank goodness you turned out so well, Victoria. Even worse were the strategic discussions about how to handle me. Victoria, I'm thinking of staging an intervention. Maybe if she hears it from everyone at once, she'll realize how unrealistic she's being. Mom had apparently joined these conversations. I try to be supportive, but I'm starting to worry she's having some kind of breakdown. This obsession with the computer thing isn't healthy. Dad, maybe we should talk to her about community college. She could get a degree in something practical, like accounting. They'd been planning my life behind my back, deciding what was best for me, treating me like a problem to be solved rather than a person making her own choices. Victoria had positioned herself as the family spokesperson on the Jasmine situation, and everyone had bought into her narrative. But the most devastating discovery came when I found screenshots Victoria had shared in the group. Screenshots of text conversations between us that I'd thought were private. She'd posted our exchange from 3 months ago when I'd asked if she knew any small businesses that might be interested in testing my AI platform. Jasmine, hey, I know you work with a lot of companies. Do you know anyone who might be willing to beta test a customer service AI? It's really sophisticated and could save them tons of time. Victoria, I'll ask around, but honestly, most businesses I work with are pretty established. They're not really looking for experimental solutions. Jasmine, it's not experimental, it's just new. The technology is solid. Victoria, okay, I'll see what I can do. Below the screenshots, Victoria had written, she's still convinced people will pay for this chatbot thing. I didn't have the heart to tell her that real businesses need proven solutions, not pet projects from someone's bedroom. The comments were brutal. Poor Victoria having to manage her sister's delusions. She's probably going to ask you for money soon to keep this fantasy going. You're being so nice about this. I would have told her the truth by now. I stared at the screen in my dark apartment, realizing that Victoria had never intended to help me find beta testers. She'd dismissed my request immediately, but pretended to consider it, then shared our private conversation with dozens of people so they could all laugh at my delusions. Every supportive thing she'd said to my face had been performative. Every family gathering where she'd asked about my business had been gathering material for her private comedy show about her pathetic sister. But the worst part was yet to come. I found a private Instagram story Victoria had posted 6 months ago, visible only to her close friends list. It was a video taken at our cousin's wedding, where I'd been sitting alone at a table, checking my phone for beta user feedback while the reception continued around me. The video showed me from behind, hunched over my phone, isolated from the festivities. Victoria's voice whispered over the video, "When your sister brings her business to a wedding, some people literally cannot stop trying to make their fake startup happen." The responses to that story, preserved in her highlights section, were devastating. "OMG, she's still on that computer stuff? That's so embarrassing. This is honestly sad, Victoria. She needs professional help. You're a saint for putting up with this. I would disown her." Plot twist. She's probably just playing phone games and calling it work. I sat back in my desk chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. The betrayal wasn't just the recent Instagram post. It was 2 years of systematic humiliation, 2 years of Victoria turning my life into entertainment for her social circles, 2 years of family members who'd been secretly discussing what a failure I was while smiling to my face. But as I scrolled through more of Victoria's content, something else became clear. Her obsession with documenting my failures had intensified. Over the past 6 months, the private posts about me had become more frequent, more detailed, more vicious. It wasn't just casual mockery anymore. There was something desperate about it. Then I found the real reason. Buried in a business blog post that Victoria had shared to her LinkedIn profile 3 months ago, I found this line. "As regional marketing director, I've learned that authentic storytelling is crucial for brand building. People connect with real struggles and family dynamics, even when those stories are difficult to share." She'd been using my failure as material for her professional brand. Her authentic storytelling about dealing with a struggling family member had become part of her marketing expertise. She'd probably shared our story in client meetings, at networking events, in job interviews. My poverty, my struggle, my sacrifices. Victoria had turned all of it into proof of her own emotional intelligence and family leadership skills. I opened a new document and started typing everything I'd discovered. Dates, screenshots, member lists, patterns of behavior. If Victoria wanted to play the long game of systematic humiliation, I needed to document exactly what she'd been doing. But as I compiled the evidence, I realized something that made my hands shake with anger. Victoria's career success wasn't just built on her own merit. She'd been using me as a case study in failure to demonstrate her own wisdom and stability. Her promotion to regional director, her speaking opportunities, her social media influence, how much of it was built on the narrative of being the successful sister who gracefully handled family dysfunction. At 3 a.m., I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and began writing code, not for my AI platform, but for something else entirely. A comprehensive data analysis tool that would help me understand exactly how much of Victoria's online presence was built on mocking me. I spent the next 8 hours building a program that scraped and analyzed every public post, comment, and interaction across Victoria's social media accounts. I created sentiment analysis algorithms to categorize the tone of posts that referenced family, financial responsibility, and professional achievement. I built visualization tools to map the timeline of her content against key events in my life. What the data revealed was staggering. Victoria's engagement rates were 340% higher on posts that directly or indirectly referenced me. Her follower growth had accelerated dramatically after she started sharing family struggles content. The business opportunities, speaking invitations, and brand partnerships that had elevated her career, they'd all started after she began positioning herself as the relatable executive dealing with family challenges. Victoria hadn't just betrayed me, She'd built her empire on my suffering, and now I had 12 gigabytes of data to prove it. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. First, I had to finish building something that would make her betrayal irrelevant. I had to prove that while she was busy mocking my failure, I was actually building the future. The next morning, I called my one beta client, a small accounting firm that had been testing my AI platform for 6 weeks. The owner, Margaret, had been hesitant at first but agreed to try it because her customer service was drowning in routine inquiries during tax season. "Jasmine," she said when she answered the phone, "I was just about to call you. This system you built, I don't know how to tell you this, but it's incredible." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "We processed 847 customer inquiries yesterday. The AI handled 612 of them completely autonomously, and every single response was perfect. Professional, personalized, accurate. My staff had time to focus on complex cases for the first time in years. Our customer satisfaction scores are through the roof." "Really?" "Really. And here's the thing. I've been talking about it with other business owners. My accountant friend in Phoenix wants to know if she can get access. The lawyer down the street stopped by specifically to ask about it. Word is spreading." After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. While Victoria had been busy turning my struggle into content, I'd actually built something that worked. Something that solved real problems for real businesses. Something that could scale. I opened my laptop and looked at the AI platform's admin dashboard. Over the past month, Margaret's usage had generated enough data to train the system on thousands of customer service scenarios. The machine learning algorithms had refined themselves beyond anything I'd originally programmed. What I'd built wasn't just a chatbot or an automated response system. I'd created an artificial intelligence that could genuinely understand context, emotion, and nuance in customer communications. It could adapt to different business voices while maintaining authentic human-like interaction. And Victoria had no idea. While she'd been building her brand on my supposed failure, I'd been quietly building the kind of technology that could transform entire industries. While she'd been collecting likes for mocking my pet project, I'd been solving problems that billion-dollar companies struggled with. The irony was perfect. Victoria's cruelest post, the one designed to humiliate me most completely, had been published just weeks before I achieved the breakthrough that would prove everything she'd said wrong. But I still wasn't ready to reveal what I'd built. Not yet. First, I wanted to see exactly how far Victoria would go. I wanted to document every cruel post, every family meeting where they discussed my failures, every business opportunity she gained by positioning herself as my long-suffering sister. Because when the time came to tell my real story, when TechCrunch announced my $50 million valuation, when investors lined up to meet with me, when my face was on magazine covers, I wanted the contrast to be devastating. Victoria thought. She'd destroyed me with one viral post. She had no idea she'd just motivated me to destroy her entire narrative. And I was just getting started. 2 weeks after discovering Victoria's systematic betrayal, I was sitting in a WeWork space in downtown Denver at 6 a.m., laptop open, surrounded by empty coffee cups and legal pads covered in strategic notes. The early hour meant I had the place to myself. No distractions, no curious glances from other entrepreneurs who might recognize me as that viral broke sister. What had started as anger had crystallized into something far more dangerous, a methodical plan. I'd spent 14 days documenting everything. Victoria's social media patterns, her professional timeline, her financial growth correlating with content about me, even the dates when major career opportunities had coincided with her most vicious posts about my failures. The data painted a clear picture of someone who had systematically exploited family trauma for personal gain. But documentation wasn't enough. I needed leverage. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret, my beta client. 3 more businesses asked about your system yesterday. I think you're sitting on a gold mine. She was right, but she didn't understand the scale of what I'd built. Over the past month, while Victoria was basking in her viral moment, I'd been quietly perfecting something revolutionary. My AI wasn't just handling customer service. It was learning to understand human emotional states with unprecedented accuracy. The breakthrough had come at 3 a.m. the previous Tuesday. I'd been training the system on a massive dataset of customer communications. When I noticed something extraordinary, the AI was identifying emotional subtext that humans missed. It could detect frustration masked as politeness, urgency hidden in casual language, satisfaction buried under formal business speak. What I'd created wasn't just a customer service tool, it was an emotional intelligence platform that could revolutionize how businesses understood their customers. But I wasn't ready to reveal that yet. First, I had to execute phase 1 of my plan. I opened my laptop and navigated to a file labeled Family Dynamics Analysis, my comprehensive report on Victoria's exploitation strategy. 47 pages of screenshots, data visualizations, and timeline correlations showing exactly how she'd monetized my struggle. The document revealed patterns that even surprised me. Victoria's content strategy was sophisticated. She'd timed posts about my failures to coincide with her own professional announcements, creating a narrative contrast that made her achievements seem more impressive. She'd used my struggles as case studies in her marketing presentations, positioning herself as someone who understood real-world challenges while maintaining professional success. Most damaging of all, I'd found evidence that Victoria had actively sabotaged opportunities for me while publicly offering to help. Remember when I'd asked her about potential beta clients? I'd discovered through LinkedIn research that Victoria's company had a partnership with a customer service software provider, a direct competitor to what I was building. Her dismissal of my platform wasn't just personal cruelty, it was market protection for her professional relationships. She'd been strategically keeping me down while profiting from my struggles. But the smoking gun was a cached version of Victoria's professional website from 6 months ago. Under her About section, she'd written, "Drawing from personal experience managing family members through financial and career challenges, Victoria brings authentic empathy to brand storytelling and crisis communication. Family members, plural. But she only had one sibling. Victoria had literally advertised her expertise in managing me as a professional qualification." I closed the report and opened a new document. Project Vindication, Phase Implementation Strategy. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Phase 1. Silent growth. Continue developing my AI platform while documenting Victoria's behavior. Let her continue believing she'd destroyed me while I quietly built something extraordinary. Phase 2. Strategic. Positioning. Begin securing serious clients and building revenue without Victoria's knowledge. Create undeniable proof of success. Phase 3. Professional validation. Attract major investors and media attention to establish credibility before any public confrontation. Phase 4. The revelation. Use Victoria's own documentation against her, while simultaneously revealing my success story. Phase 5. Industry transformation. Position myself as a thought leader in AI and emotional intelligence while Victoria's influence crumbles. I was currently executing Phase 1, but Phase 2 was about to begin. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize with a Seattle area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Is this Jasmine Chen? This is David Rodriguez from Cascade Ventures. We're a venture capital firm focused on AI startups." My heart stopped. "Yes, this is Jasmine. I got your information from Margaret Stevens at Stevens Accounting. She showed me a demo of your customer service AI, and frankly, I've never seen anything like it. Would you be available for a call this week to discuss potential investment opportunities?" I struggled to keep my voice steady. "I'd be very interested in that conversation." "Excellent. Before we schedule anything formal, Can you send me a brief overview of your technology and current market traction? Nothing elaborate, just enough to understand what you've built. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. A VC firm had just reached out to me. Not the other way around. They'd contacted me based on word of mouth about my platform's performance. This was the break I'd been working toward for 18 months. I spent the next 6 hours crafting a presentation that would change everything. But unlike the desperate pitch decks I'd created before Victoria's post, this one was backed by real data, real results, real transformation of actual businesses. My AI platform wasn't theoretical anymore. It was working in the real world, generating measurable results, solving problems that established companies struggled with. I had usage statistics, customer satisfaction scores, efficiency improvements, and revenue impacts that spoke for themselves. The presentation told a story of accidental discovery, how building a customer service AI had led to breakthrough insights, about emotional intelligence in digital communication, how what started as a simple automation tool had evolved into something that could fundamentally change how businesses understood their customers. I didn't mention Victoria. I didn't reference family drama or social media humiliation. The presentation was purely professional, focusing on technology, market opportunity, and scalable impact. But as I polished the final slides, I was thinking about Victoria's LinkedIn post from 3 months ago, the one where she'd bragged about her authentic storytelling expertise. Soon, the world would see what authentic success actually looked like. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went out to dinner. Not because I could afford it, but because I needed to remember what it felt like to believe in myself again. I chose a small restaurant in a neighborhood I'd never been to, somewhere Victoria's influence couldn't follow me. While waiting for my food, I opened my laptop and began writing something I'd never attempted before. A blog post about entrepreneurship and family dynamics. I didn't plan to publish it yet. This was preparation for Phase 4. But I wanted to capture my thoughts while they were fresh before success potentially changed my perspective on what I'd endured. The post began, "What nobody tells you about building a startup is that sometimes your biggest obstacles aren't technical challenges or market competition. They're the people who claim to love you." I wrote about the isolation of pursuing dreams that others don't understand. About the weight of disappointing people who've defined you by their expectations. About the unique cruelty of family members who use your struggles as entertainment while offering performative support. But I also wrote about discovery, how being pushed to the absolute bottom had forced me to find strength I didn't know I possessed. How public humiliation had taught me to stop seeking validation from people who'd already decided I was worth mocking. Most importantly, I wrote about the moment when you realize that other people's opinions of your potential have no bearing on your actual capabilities. The blog post was cathartic to write, but it also served a strategic purpose. When the time came to tell my story publicly, I wanted to control the narrative. Victoria had spent 2 years defining me as a failure. I needed to redefine myself as someone who'd overcome systematic sabotage to achieve something extraordinary. I walked home from dinner. My phone buzzed with an email from David Rodriguez. "Jasmine, reviewed your presentation materials. Very impressive. Let's schedule a formal meeting for next week. Can you accommodate Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific? We'd like to discuss a potential Series A round." Series A. The words that every startup founder dreams of hearing. I stopped walking and read the email 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. A venture capital firm wanted to discuss Series A funding for a platform that Victoria had dismissed as a chatbot thing and pet project from someone's bedroom. That night, I couldn't sleep. But for the first time in months, it was excitement, rather than anxiety keeping me awake. I kept opening my laptop to stare at David's email, proof that my 18 months of sacrifice hadn't been delusional. But I also kept thinking about Victoria's most recent Instagram posts. Just yesterday, she'd shared a story about attending some marketing conference in San Francisco, posing with executives from major tech companies. The caption read, "Grateful to be learning from the innovators who are actually changing the world, you're inspired, you're next level." Innovators who are actually changing the world. The implication was clear, as opposed to wannabes who think they're changing the world, but are really just wasting everyone's time. Victoria had no idea that while she was networking at surface level, industry events, I was building technology that would actually disrupt how businesses operated. While she was collecting business cards and LinkedIn connections, I was solving problems that billion-dollar companies couldn't crack. The irony was delicious, but I couldn't savor it yet. I was still in phase 1, silent growth while documenting her behavior. Any premature celebration could sabotage the larger plan. Over the next 3 days, I prepared for the most important meeting of my life. I rehearsed my presentation until I could deliver it flawlessly, researched Cascade Ventures until I understood their investment philosophy better than they did, and refined my financial projections based on the exponential growth I was seeing with early clients. But I also continued my documentation project. Victoria's social media activity had actually intensified since her viral post about me. She'd been invited to speak at 2 industry panels specifically about authentic brand storytelling and managing professional success alongside family challenges. She was literally building a speaking career on her expertise in dealing with me. I screenshot every post, saved every story, documented every professional opportunity that seemed connected to her family dynamics narrative. When the time came to reveal how she'd exploited my struggle, I wanted the evidence to be overwhelming. On Monday night, the evening before my VC meeting, I received an unexpected text from Victoria. "Hey, saw Mom last weekend. She's worried about you. Maybe we should all have dinner soon. I know things have been weird since Christmas, but you're still my sister." I stared at the message for a long time. The casual tone, the heart emoji, the implication that any weirdness between us was mutual rather than her systematic humiliation campaign. It was masterful manipulation. But what struck me most was the timing. Victoria had spent 2 weeks building her brand on my failure, and now she was reaching out with sisterly concern just as I was about to achieve the biggest breakthrough of my life. It was almost like she sensed something was changing. I typed and deleted several responses before settling on something neutral. "Thanks for checking in. I'm doing well, just focused on work right now." Her response came immediately. "That's great. Still working on the computer thing? You know I'm always here if you want to talk about other options." Computer thing. Other options. Even in her attempt. At reconciliation, Victoria couldn't resist diminishing what I was building. She was still operating under the assumption that my pet project would eventually fail, and I'd need her guidance to find something more realistic. I didn't respond to that message. Instead, I opened my presentation one final time and made a small addition to the last slide, a quote I'd found attributed to Steve Jobs. "People think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means. At all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas." Tomorrow, I would say yes to the most important opportunity of my life, and I would continue saying no to everyone who'd tried to convince me I wasn't capable of extraordinary things. Victoria's text sat unanswered on my phone, a reminder of everything I was working to prove wrong. In 12 hours, I would be sitting across from investors who wanted to give me millions of dollars to build the future. And Victoria would still be building her career on stories about her struggling sister, completely unaware that her primary source material was about to disappear forever. The best part? I was going to let her keep mocking me right up until the moment when the entire world learned what I'd actually accomplished. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply succeeding beyond everyone's imagination while they're still busy explaining why you'll fail. Tuesday, February 14th. Valentine's Day. The universe had a twisted sense of humor scheduling the most important meeting of my life on a day dedicated to love. Considering I was about to fall in love with my own potential, while simultaneously orchestrating the downfall of my sister's carefully constructed narrative. I stood outside the Cascade Ventures office building in downtown Seattle. 43. Floors of steel and glass reaching toward a gray morning sky. My reflection in the lobby windows showed a version of myself I barely recognized. A professional blazer I'd splurged on specifically for this meeting, hairstyled instead of thrown into my usual messy bun, laptop bag that looked expensive even. Though I'd bought it secondhand, but it was my eyes that looked different. For the first time in months, they held certainty instead of desperation. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt eternal. I used the time to review my strategy one final time. This wasn't just about securing funding. This was about establishing myself as a force in the AI industry before Victoria even realized what was happening. David Rodriguez met me in the reception area, a tall man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident handshake that suggested he'd made a lot of very smart bets over the years. Jasmine, thank you for making the trip up from Denver. I have to tell you, your preliminary materials generated quite a buzz with our team. He led me through a maze of glass-walled conference rooms toward a corner office with panoramic views of Elliott Bay. Along the way, I caught glimpses of whiteboards covered in startup names, funding amounts, and technical diagrams. This was where dreams either came true or died. Before we dive into the formal presentation, David said, settling behind his desk, I want you to know that Margaret Stevens gave you the strongest recommendation I've heard in 15 years of venture capital. She told me your platform didn't just solve her customer service problem, it transformed how she thinks about customer relationships entirely. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. Margaret's been an incredible partner in developing the platform. Her willingness to beta test allowed us to refine capabilities that I don't think exist anywhere else in the market. That's exactly what we want to explore. Walk me through what you've built, but more importantly, show me where you see this going. I opened my laptop and began the presentation that would change everything. For the next 90 minutes, I walked David through technology that even I was still discovering the full potential of. The AI platform that had started as a simple customer service tool had evolved into something unprecedented, a system that could understand emotional nuance in digital communication with human-level accuracy. I showed him real data from Margaret's accounting firm, customer satisfaction scores that had jumped from 73% to 97%, response times that had decreased by 85%, and most impressively, a 340% increase in customer retention because the AI was identifying and addressing emotional concerns that human representatives had missed entirely. But here's what makes this truly revolutionary, I said, clicking to a slide that showed emotional pattern analysis across thousands of customer interactions. We're not just responding to what customers say, we're understanding what they feel. The platform identifies frustration before it becomes anger, recognizes satisfaction markers that predict long-term loyalty, and detects urgency signals that humans miss completely. David leaned forward, studying the data visualizations. You're saying your AI has emotional intelligence? I'm saying our AI has emotional perception capabilities that exceed human accuracy in digital communications. We've tested it against human customer service representatives, and the AI consistently identifies emotional subtext that trained professionals miss. I clicked to the next slide, Market Opportunity Analysis. Customer service is a $75 billion market, but emotional intelligence in business communication is completely untapped. We're not just building a better chatbot. We're creating the first platform that gives businesses genuine emotional insight into every customer interaction. What's your current ARR? David asked, referring to annual recurring revenue. We launched paid pilots 6 weeks ago with 3 companies. Current monthly recurring revenue is $8,400, but we have 12 more businesses starting trials next month based purely on word-of-mouth referrals. David made notes on a legal pad, his expression unreadable. Tell me about your background. How did you develop expertise in both AI development and emotional intelligence? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. How to tell my story without mentioning Victoria's systematic sabotage, while still conveying the determination that had driven me to build something extraordinary. I spent 2 years freelancing as a web developer while building this platform in my spare time. During that period, I was essentially living in survival mode. Every financial decision was strategic. Every hour was allocated between paying bills and pursuing this vision. That experience taught me to focus on solving real problems rather than building theoretical solutions. What gave you confidence that emotional AI was the right direction? Honestly, necessity. I was working alone, with no team, no mentors, no safety net. I had to build something that would work immediately and demonstrably solve problems that existing solutions couldn't address. The emotional intelligence capabilities emerged from trying to create the most effective customer service tool possible with extremely limited resources. It was true, even if it wasn't the complete truth. Victoria's public humiliation had motivated me to prove her wrong, but the technology itself had been driven by genuine innovation necessity. David asked increasingly technical questions for another hour about machine learning algorithms, data privacy protocols, scalability infrastructure, competitive advantages. I answered each one with the confidence of someone who'd lived inside this technology for 18 months, who understood every line of code and every potential application. Finally, he set down his pen and looked directly at me. Jasmine, I'm going to be very direct with you. What you've built is remarkable. But what's more remarkable is that you've built it entirely on your own while maintaining paying clients and generating revenue. That combination of technical skill and business execution is extremely rare. My mouth felt dry. Thank you. I'd like to schedule a follow-up meeting with our full investment committee for next week. We're interested in discussing a Series A round in the range of $3.2 million for a 20% equity stake. The numbers hit me like cold water. $3.2 million. A $16 million valuation for something Victoria had called a pet project from someone's bedroom. That sounds very interesting, I managed to say, proud of how steady my voice remained. There's one more thing, David said, pulling out his phone. I'd like to introduce you to someone who could be valuable as you scale. Have you heard of TechCrunch? My heart nearly stopped. TechCrunch was the most influential technology publication in the world. Getting covered by TechCrunch was every startup founder's dream, and nightmare, depending on what they wrote. Of course. Our portfolio companies have a strong relationship with their editorial team. If you're interested, I can arrange an introduction. A story about breakthrough AI technology developed by a solo founder could generate significant industry attention. Industry. Attention. Media coverage. Public validation on a scale that would make Victoria's social media influence look insignificant. I'd be very interested in that opportunity. David smiled for the first time during our meeting. Excellent. I'll make some calls this afternoon. Walking out of that building, I felt like I was floating. The Seattle skyline looked different. Not like a foreign city where I was begging for opportunities, but like a place where I belonged, where my ideas had value, where my work mattered. But I couldn't celebrate yet. This was still phase 2 of my plan. I needed to secure the funding, establish media credibility, and build undeniable proof of success before phase 4, the revelation. On the flight back to Denver, I drafted an email to my 3 current clients with a subject line that would have seemed impossible 6 weeks ago. Platform scaling and enhanced feature development. I explained that based on demand, I was expanding the platform's capabilities and would be implementing new features based on additional funding and development resources. The implication was clear. This wasn't a struggling side project anymore. This was a rapidly growing business with serious investment backing. Margaret responded within 2 hours. "This is incredible news. Can we schedule a call about expanding our usage to our Phoenix office?" The second client, a boutique law firm, replied, "We've been telling every business owner we know about your platform. Can you handle more clients? We've gotten at least 6 inquiries." The third client requested a meeting to discuss enterprise-level implementation across multiple locations. Word was spreading exactly as I'd hoped, not through marketing or publicity, but through results that spoke for themselves. That evening, I was back in my apartment, updating my strategic documentation, when my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Hope you had a good day. Mom mentioned you seemed happier lately. What's going on with the work stuff?" The timing was uncanny. It was like Victoria had a sixth sense for moments when I was making progress, moments when she needed to remind me that she was still monitoring my life. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Just staying busy with projects." Her reply was immediate. "That's great. You know, I've been thinking maybe I could introduce you to some people in tech. My company works with a lot of startups, and I might be able to help you network into something more stable." Something more stable. Even now, with VC interest and paying clients, Victoria was still operating under the assumption that my computer thing was inherently unstable and that I needed her connections to find real opportunities. The condescension was breathtaking, but it was also perfect. Victoria's continued dismissal meant she had no idea what was actually happening with my business. She was still planning my intervention while I was planning my industry debut. I didn't respond to her networking offer. Instead, I opened my laptop and began drafting something I'd been thinking about since the meeting with David: a comprehensive business plan for the next 18 months. If Cascade Ventures was serious about $3.2 million in funding, I needed to show them exactly how I planned to build that investment into something transformational. But more than that, I needed to prove to myself that this wasn't just about proving Victoria wrong. This was about building something genuinely valuable. The business plan took shape over the next 6 hours. Quarter 1. Complete series. A. Funding. Hire 2 senior AI developers. Expand to 25 paying clients. Quarter 2. Launch enterprise features. Establish partnerships with major CRM platforms. Scale to 100 clients. Quarter 3. International expansion. Additional funding round. Team of 15 employees. Quarter 4. Industry conference presentations. Thought leadership content. Preparation for Series B. It was ambitious to the point of seeming delusional, but the technology supported it. What I'd built wasn't just incrementally better than existing solutions, it was categorically different. And in the AI industry, categorical differences created market revolutions. At 2 a.m., I received an email that made me sit up straighter. Subject: TechCrunch Introduction. David Rodriguez Referral. The message was from Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, a senior editor at TechCrunch who specialized in AI and machine learning coverage. David had made the introduction even faster than promised. "Hi, Jasmine. David Rodriguez speaks very highly of your emotional intelligence platform. I'd love to learn more about what you've built and potentially discuss a feature story. Would you be available for a preliminary call this week?" A TechCrunch feature story. The kind of coverage that turned unknown founders into industry celebrities, overnight. The kind of validation that made investors compete to participate in funding rounds. The kind of platform that would make Victoria's social media influence look like noise. I spent the rest of the night preparing for that call, but I also spent time thinking about what this moment meant for my relationship with Victoria. Once TechCrunch published a story about my success, there would be no going back to the family dynamic where she was the accomplished sister and I was the struggling disappointment. Everything would change, and I was ready for it. But first, I needed to make sure the story they told was the one I wanted the world to hear. This wasn't just about business success. This was about redefining what determination looked like when someone systematically tried to undermine your dreams. Victoria had spent 2 years building her brand on my supposed failure. In the next 2 weeks, I was going to show the world what actual success looked like when it emerged from systematic opposition. The best part? She still had no idea what was coming. I closed my laptop and walked to the window of my small apartment, looking out at the Denver skyline. In 6 months, I'd probably be living somewhere completely different, running a company with real employees, speaking at conferences where people wanted to hear about breakthrough AI technology. But for now, I was still in the same studio apartment, where Victoria's cruel post had found me at 2:47 a.m. 3 months ago. The difference was that now I knew exactly how this story was going to end, and Victoria was going to hate every minute of it. March 15th, 2024. 6:00 a.m. Pacific Time. The moment everything changed. I was sitting in my new temporary office, a proper workspace I'd rented after closing the Series A funding 2 weeks earlier, when Sarah Chen from TechCrunch called with news that would detonate Victoria's carefully constructed world. Jasmine, we're going to live with your story in 30 minutes. The solo founder who built revolutionary emotional AI while everyone doubted her is going to be our lead tech story today. My hands trembled as I opened the TechCrunch website and saw the preview of my article. There was my photo, professional, confident, standing in front of a whiteboard covered with AI architecture diagrams. The headline was perfect. It told my story without mentioning Victoria directly, but anyone who knew about her viral post would understand the subtext. The article includes your funding announcement, the $16 million valuation, and interviews with 3 of your clients about how the platform has transformed their businesses, Sarah continued. We're also running a sidebar about AI breakthroughs happening outside traditional Silicon Valley networks. After we hung up, I sat in silence for exactly 60 seconds, letting the reality sink in. Then I opened my laptop and began executing Phase 4 of my plan. At 6:30 a.m., the TechCrunch article went live. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Not cruel comments about being a broke loser, but congratulations from tech industry leaders, interview requests from other publications, and LinkedIn connection requests from investors and entrepreneurs I'd only dreamed of meeting. But more importantly, the article was being shared across every social media platform. The narrative was spreading. Solo female founder builds breakthrough AI technology, secures major funding, proves that determination overcomes systematic doubt. I watched the article climb TechCrunch's trending list, number 3, number 2, and by 7:15 a.m., it was the number 1 most read story on the entire platform. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. At 7:43 a.m., my phone rang with a call from Mom. Her voice was shaking with excitement and confusion. Jasmine, honey, your Aunt Susan just sent me a link to something called TechCrunch. Is this real? Did you really get millions of dollars for your computer business? Yes, Mom, it's real. But Victoria said you were... She told us you were struggling, that the business wasn't working out. This was the conversation I'd been preparing for since Christmas. Mom, I need to tell you something about Victoria that's going to be hard to hear. For the next 20 minutes, I walked my mother through everything I'd discovered: the private Facebook group, the systematic humiliation campaign, the professional opportunities Victoria had built on mocking my failures, the strategic sabotage disguised as sisterly concern. I sent her screenshots of Victoria's posts, the timeline showing how her career opportunities correlated with content about me, and the LinkedIn descriptions where Victoria advertised her expertise in managing family challenges. Mom was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said something that broke my heart. I knew something was wrong. Deep down, I knew. Victoria's stories about you never matched what I saw when you visited, but she was so confident, so detailed. I thought maybe I just didn't understand what you were going through. She's very good at controlling narratives, I said gently. Jasmine, I'm so sorry. We all failed you. We let her convince us that supporting you meant preparing you for failure instead of believing in your success. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with another call. Victoria. Mom, I have to go. Victoria's calling. Don't answer it yet. Let her see the article first. Let her understand what she's done before you talk to her. I hung up and watched Victoria's name flash on my screen until it went to voicemail. Then I opened Instagram. Victoria's latest story, posted just 20 minutes earlier, showed her at some coffee shop, holding a latte with the caption, Tuesday Motivation. Sometimes you have to be the realistic voice for people you love, even when they don't want to hear it. Tough love to our family. The timing was incredible. She'd posted about being the realistic voice for family members just as the world was learning about my $16 million AI company. But as I watched, her story views were climbing unusually fast. People weren't just viewing it, they were screenshotting it. The comments on her recent posts were changing tone. Girl, didn't you post about your broke sister? She just got millions for her AI company, Elmo. This aged poorly. Imagine calling your sister a loser and she becomes a tech millionaire. Victoria Bestie, you might want to check TechCrunch. Plot twist. The broke loser sister was actually building the future. I could see the exact moment Victoria discovered the article. Her Instagram activity stopped abruptly. No more story views, no responses to comments, complete radio silence. At 8:47 a.m., she called again. This time, I answered. Jasmine. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. I just saw the TechCrunch article. Which part caught your attention? I asked calmly. You got funding, serious funding, for your platform. Yes. Cascade Ventures led a $3.2 million Series A round. We're valued at $16 million. Silence. Then, when did this happen? The funding closed 2 weeks ago. The technology's been working for months. I have 12 paying clients now, with a waiting list of 43 more businesses that want to implement the platform. But you never said? When we texted, you said you were just staying busy with projects. I was staying busy with projects. Building a revolutionary AI company qualifies as a project. Another long pause. When Victoria spoke again, her voice had shifted to damage control mode, the professional tone she used when managing PR crises. This is incredible news, Jasmine. I'm so proud of you. I always knew you had potential. I just worried that you were putting too much pressure on yourself. This is amazing. I always knew you had potential. The revisionist history was already beginning. Victoria, we need to talk about your Instagram post from December, the one where you called me a broke loser. That was a joke. Family teasing. You know I didn't mean anything serious by it. It got 50,000 likes and 800 comments. Most of them were strangers mocking my life based on your captions and hashtags. I know it probably looked bad from your perspective, but I also know about the private Facebook group, Chen Family Updates, where you've been documenting my struggles for extended family members to discuss and judge. The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Jasmine, I can explain. I know about the LinkedIn posts where you advertised your expertise in managing family members through career challenges. I know about the speaking opportunities you got based on your authentic storytelling about dealing with struggling relatives. I know about the client presentations where you used my situation as a case study in family crisis management. Victoria's breathing became audible through the phone. I documented everything, Victoria. Screenshots, timelines, correlation analysis between your career opportunities and your posts about my failures. I have 2 years of evidence showing how you systematically exploited my struggle to build your professional brand. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. While I was working 18-hour days to build breakthrough technology, you were working 18 hours to monetize my struggle. While I was sacrificing everything to prove this platform could work, you were sacrificing our relationship to prove that you were the successful sister dealing gracefully with family dysfunction. That's not... I was trying to help you see reality. I was trying to protect you from wasting years on something that might not work out. By publicly humiliating me, by turning my life into entertainment for your followers, by sabotaging networking, opportunities while pretending to offer support. I never sabotaged. You dismissed my platform as a chatbot thing to potential clients while privately sharing screenshots of our conversations for people to mock. You positioned yourself as the family expert on managing me while actively working to keep me dependent and struggling. Victoria's composure finally cracked. You're my sister. Everything I did was because I love you and didn't want to watch. You fail. No, Victoria. Everything you did was because my failure made your success look more impressive. You needed me to be the cautionary tale that proved how smart and stable you were. The line went quiet except for what sounded like Victoria crying. What do you want from me? She whispered. Nothing. I don't want anything from you anymore. Jasmine, please. We can fix this. I'll delete the posts. I'll explain to everyone that I was wrong. I'll do whatever you need. But it was too late for that. While we'd been talking, the internet had been doing what it does. Finding connections, creating narratives, building viral content from dramatic irony. Someone had already created a side-by-side comparison, Victoria's broke loser sister post, next to the TechCrunch headline about my success. The image was spreading across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit with captions like, "When you mock your sister's startup and she becomes a millionaire," and "Plot twist of the year." Victoria's mentions were flooding with people who'd seen both stories. Her follower count was actually increasing, but not for reasons she wanted. People were following her to watch the fallout, to see how she'd respond to being exposed as the cruel sister who'd publicly mocked a secretly successful entrepreneur. "Victoria, check your Instagram mentions," I said quietly. I heard her typing, then a sharp intake of breath. Oh God, Jasmine, this is getting out of control. This is what out of control looks like when you build your brand on cruelty. When you make someone's private struggle into public entertainment, you don't get to control how that story ends. Please, you have to help me. Tell people it was just a misunderstanding, that we were joking around. You could post something explaining. Explaining what? That when you called me a broke loser who couldn't afford real plates, you were actually being supportive? That when you created hashtags like Don Family Shame and Ram Get Your Life Together, you meant them with love? I'll do anything. I'll give you money. I'll invest in your company. Victoria, I don't need your money. I don't need your investment. I don't need your support or your networking or your advice about finding something more stable. I have built something extraordinary while you were busy mocking my efforts. But we're family. We're sisters. This can't be how it ends. I looked out the window of my new office, watching Seattle's morning traffic flow past. In a few hours, I had interviews scheduled with 3 more major publications. Tomorrow, I was flying to San Francisco to meet with additional investors who were competing to participate in our next funding round. Victoria had spent 2 years trying to convince everyone, including me, that I was a failure. But while she'd been building her empire on my supposed weakness, I'd been building an actual empire that would outlast her influence and redefine entire industries. You're right, I said finally. We are sisters, which makes what you did even worse. I hung up. Within an hour, Victoria had deleted the original broke loser sister post. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots were everywhere, and the deletion only made the story more viral. News outlets were picking up the narrative. Tech entrepreneur's sister deletes viral post mocking her success. By noon, Charna broke loser sister was trending on Twitter, not as mockery of me, but as a celebration of my success and condemnation of Victoria's cruelty. The story had taken on a life of its own. Family member publicly humiliates startup founder who quietly builds revolutionary company and secures millions in funding while the humiliation goes viral. It was the kind of dramatic irony that social media was built to amplify. Victoria called 6 more times that day. I didn't answer. Instead, I spent the afternoon giving interviews about my AI platform, my vision for the company's future, and my philosophy about persevering when people doubt your potential. Not once did I mention Victoria by name. I didn't need to. The interviewers already knew the story. When asked about family support during my entrepreneurial journey, I simply said, "Not everyone in your life will understand your vision. Success is about building something valuable regardless of who believes in you initially." That evening, I received a text from Mom. "Watched your interview on Tech today. You handled everything with such grace. I'm proud of the woman you've become, and I'm sorry it took this for us to see who you really are." Then a message from Dad. "Your old man owes you an apology. That AI thing you built, it's going to change the world, isn't it?" Even Aunt Susan, who'd been one of the most vocal critics in Victoria's private Facebook group, sent a message. "I misjudged you completely. Congratulations on your success. Victoria was wrong about everything." But Victoria herself had gone completely silent. Her Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter accounts showed no activity since deleting the original post. The woman who'd built her brand on constant social media presence had disappeared entirely. I didn't gloat. I didn't post victory laps or subtle digs. I simply focused on building my company and sharing my vision for the future of emotional AI. Because the best revenge isn't public humiliation. It's becoming so successful that your critics' opinions become irrelevant. And Victoria's opinions about my potential had just become the most irrelevant thing in the world. 6 months later, September 23, 2024. I was standing on the rooftop terrace of my new headquarters in downtown Austin, a 12,000 square foot space that housed EmotiQ AI, the company that had grown from my studio apartment obsession into a 47-person operation, revolutionizing how businesses understand their customers. The sunset painted the Texas sky in shades of amber and rose, and I could see our company logo illuminated on the building across the street, a partnership announcement with a Fortune 500 company that had just gone live that morning. The press release sitting on my desk downstairs announced what everyone in the industry had been predicting. EmotiQ AI had just closed a Series B funding round led by Andreessen Horowitz, valuing the company at $50 million. For the pet project from someone's bedroom that Victoria had mocked 6 months earlier. My phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn. "Your post about authentic leadership has received 50,000 likes and 1,200 comments." The post was a reflection on building companies during adversity, and it had resonated with entrepreneurs worldwide who'd faced doubt from the people closest to them. But it wasn't the business metrics that made this moment profound. It was the personal transformation that had happened alongside professional success. I was no longer the woman who'd sat in her car for 20 minutes before Christmas dinner, gathering courage to face family judgment. I was no longer the person who checked social media notifications with dread, wondering what fresh humiliation awaited. I'd become someone who understood that other people's opinions of your potential are just noise, and the only voice that matters is the one that keeps building when everyone else says stop. The elevator chimed behind me, and my assistant, Marcus, emerged onto the terrace. "Jasmine, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your sister, but she doesn't have an appointment." Victoria. I'd been expecting this moment for months. After the TechCrunch story broke, Victoria had maintained radio silence while I'd built a media presence as one of the most promising AI entrepreneurs in the country. She'd watched from the sidelines as I spoke at conferences, appeared on magazine covers, and built the kind of influence she'd always craved, but based on actual innovation rather than social media manipulation. "Send her up," I said quietly. 5 minutes later, Victoria stepped onto the terrace. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile. Her usual designer outfit had been replaced with jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back in, a casual ponytail rather than the perfectly styled waves she'd maintained for Instagram. Most tellingly, she wasn't holding her phone, the device that had been practically surgically attached to her hand for years. "Hi, Jasmine." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Victoria." We stood there for a moment, Austin sprawling beneath us, the weight of 6 months and 2 years and a lifetime of complicated sisterhood hanging in the air between us. "This is incredible," she said, gesturing toward the office space visible through the glass doors. "I mean, I knew from the articles that you were doing well, but seeing it in person, you built an empire." "I built a company," I corrected. "The empire part was never the point." Victoria nodded, looking down at her hands. "I know you probably don't want to see me. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. Actually, I've been wondering when you'd show up." She looked surprised. "You have?" "Victoria, you spent 2 years building your brand on my story. Now that my story has a different ending, I figured you'd want to be part of the narrative again." Her face crumpled slightly. "That's not why I'm here." "Why are you here?" She walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out at the city. "I lost my job 3 weeks ago." The admission hung in the air like smoke. "What happened?" "The company decided my social media presence was too controversial for someone in a client-facing role. Apparently, when your brand is built on family dynamics and authentic storytelling, having a viral story about publicly humiliating your secretly successful sister doesn't play well with corporate clients." The irony was brutal. Victoria's career, which had been elevated by exploiting my struggles, had been destroyed by the revelation of my success. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "Are you?" Victoria turned to face me, her eyes red-rimmed. "Because I wouldn't blame you if you were celebrating. I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again. I'm not celebrating your failure, Victoria. I never wanted to destroy your life. I just wanted to build my own." She was quiet for a long moment. "I came here to apologize, but I don't even know where to start. What I did to you. The posts, the family meetings, the systematic humiliation. There's no excuse for it. No, there isn't. I told myself I was trying to protect you from disappointment. I convinced myself that preparing you for failure was somehow kinder than letting you hope for success, but that's not what I was really doing." "What were you really doing?" Victoria's voice broke. "I was threatened by your determination. I was scared that if you succeeded, it would prove that taking risks and following dreams was valid, and I'd built my entire life around avoiding risk and following proven paths. If you could build something extraordinary from nothing, what did that say about my achievements that required every advantage and safety net?" It was the most honest thing Victoria had ever said to me. "And the social media stuff? I turned your struggle into content because it made me feel superior. Every post about your unrealistic dreams was really about my fear that maybe dreams weren't as unrealistic as I'd convinced myself. I needed you to fail to prove that my path was the smart one. So you made sure I would fail. I tried to. God, help me. I actively worked to undermine your confidence and sabotage your opportunities because your success would have invalidated every choice I'd made." We stood in silence for several minutes. The Austin skyline glittered below us, and I could see the lights of other tech companies, other entrepreneurs working late, other dreamers building impossible things in the dark. "Victoria, do you know what the worst part was?" All of it? The worst part was that for months, I believed you. When you called my platform a chatbot thing, when you shared those hashtags about me being a broke loser, when you told the family I was having some kind of breakdown, part of me thought you might be right. Part of me wondered if I was delusional, for thinking I could build something meaningful. Victoria's tears were flowing freely now. Jasmine, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for doubting you. I'm sorry for undermining you. I'm sorry for turning your struggle into entertainment. But mostly I'm sorry for almost convincing you to doubt yourself. But I didn't stop building. No, you didn't. And that's what makes you extraordinary. You kept going even when everyone you trusted was telling you to quit. I walked to the other edge of the terrace, looking toward the university district where I'd spent so many nights coding in coffee shops, sustained by nothing but determination and gas station coffee. Victoria, I need to tell you something. The night I discovered all your posts, the private Facebook group, the professional presentations about managing family dysfunction, the systematic documentation of my failures, I wanted revenge. I planned it methodically. I documented everything you'd done. I built evidence files. I prepared to destroy your reputation as thoroughly as you'd tried to destroy mine. Victoria's face went pale. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because somewhere, in the process of building my company, I realized that success is the only revenge worth pursuing. Proving people wrong by becoming extraordinary is more powerful than exposing their cruelty. Is that why you never mentioned my name in any of the articles? I never mentioned your name because this story was never about you. It was about what happens when someone refuses to accept other people's limitations. It was about building something meaningful regardless of who believes in you. Victoria nodded slowly. What you built, this AI platform that understands emotions, it's going to change everything, isn't it? It's already changing everything. We have 312 clients across 14 countries. We're processing 2.3 million customer interactions daily. We've identified emotional patterns that help businesses prevent customer dissatisfaction before it happens and predict loyalty trends with 94% accuracy. And the $50 million valuation is just the beginning. We're planning international expansion, developing enterprise integration tools, and researching applications in healthcare communication and educational technology. The emotional AI market we've created is projected to be worth $2 billion within 5 years. Victoria stared at me with something that looked like awe. You did it. You actually built the future while I was busy mocking your present. I built one possible future, but Victoria, you could build your own. What do you mean? I turned to face her fully. You have skills. You're brilliant at understanding social dynamics, creating compelling narratives, and building authentic connections with audiences. You could use those abilities to create something meaningful instead of just managing other people's brands. You think I could start my own company? I think you could do anything you decide to pursue with genuine intention instead of defensive superiority. We talked for another hour as the sun disappeared entirely, and Austin's nightlife began to pulse around us. Victoria told me about the depression she'd experienced after losing her job, the social media detox she'd undergone when she realized how toxic her relationship with online validation had become, and the therapy sessions where she'd confronted the insecurity that had driven her to undermine my dreams. I told her about the nights I'd worked until dawn, the moments when I'd almost given up, the breakthrough discoveries that had shaped the platform, and the surreal experience of becoming the face of emotional AI while still processing the family trauma that had motivated my success. As she prepared to leave, Victoria paused at the elevator. Jasmine, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know. There's probably no way to repair what I damaged between us. But I want you to know that seeing what you've accomplished, not just the business success, but the person you've become, it's made me want to be better. Victoria, forgiveness isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I choose to carry forward. I'm choosing to carry forward the determination you accidentally taught me when you tried to convince me I couldn't succeed. Do you think Do you think there's any chance we could rebuild some kind of relationship? Maybe not sisters the way we used to be, but something? I considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, the answer would have been no. The betrayal had been too systematic, too cruel, too calculated. But success had given me perspective that revenge never could have provided. I think we could build something new, I said finally, but it would have to be based on who we actually are now, not who we were before. I'd like that. After Victoria left, I stood alone on the terrace for another hour, thinking about the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. The woman who'd walked into that Christmas dinner 8 months ago, desperate for family approval, ashamed of her financial struggles, convinced that her dreams might be delusions, felt like someone I'd known in another lifetime. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been built line by line of code, client by client, breakthrough by breakthrough, until the accumulation of small victories had created something extraordinary. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret, my first beta client. Saw the series. B announcement. Remember when you were worried that businesses wouldn't pay for emotional AI? You've created an entire industry. She was right. What had started as a desperate attempt to prove Victoria wrong had evolved into genuine innovation. That was transforming how businesses understood their customers. The platform now powered customer service for companies ranging from local accounting firms to multinational corporations. But more than the business success, I'd discovered something about resilience that no one could take away from me. The understanding that your potential isn't determined by other people's faith in your dreams. Victoria had tried to convince me that my goals were unrealistic, that my timeline was impossible, that my technology was naive. Family members had discussed my failures in private groups, potential clients had dismissed my pitches, and strangers on the internet had mocked my struggles. All of that opposition had been noise. The only signal that mattered was the voice that kept building when everyone else said stop. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, where I'd been drafting thoughts for a keynote speech I was giving next month at the International AI Conference in San Francisco. The theme was building. Breakthrough technology in the face of systematic doubt. I added one final line to the speech outline. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most are doing you the greatest favor. They're teaching you to believe in yourself unconditionally. As I took the elevator down to the main office floor, I passed the wall where we'd mounted our first major press clippings. The TechCrunch article that had started everything was framed next to features in Wired, Forbes, and Harvard Business Review. But my favorite piece was a handwritten note from a small business owner in Ohio. Your AI helped us understand that our angry customers were actually scared customers. We've never had better relationships with our clients. Thank you for seeing what we couldn't see. That note reminded me why I'd built this company in the first place. Not to prove Victoria wrong, but to solve real problems for real people. The office was quiet now, most of the team having gone home hours ago. But in the development area, I could see 3 engineers still working, their screens glowing in the dim light as they refined algorithms that would help businesses understand human emotions with unprecedented accuracy. Tomorrow, I had meetings with potential clients in healthcare and education, industries where emotional understanding could literally save lives and transform learning outcomes. Next week, I was flying to London to explore European expansion opportunities. Next month, I'd be speaking to 5,000 tech leaders about the future of emotional AI. But tonight, I was just a woman who'd learned that the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to limit your potential is to build something so extraordinary that their limitations become irrelevant. I gathered my things and headed toward the parking garage, where my car, a practical Tesla Model 3 that I'd bought after the Series A funding, waited in the CEO parking spot. Not because I needed the status symbol, but because I'd finally learned to take up the space I'd earned. As I drove through Austin's late-night streets toward my new apartment in the downtown district, a 2-bedroom place with floor-to-ceiling, Windows and a view of the lake. I thought about the text message Victoria had sent earlier that day. Saw the Series B announcement. $50 million. I don't have words for how wrong I was about everything. Congratulations on proving that dreams aren't delusions. Sometimes they're just the future arriving ahead of schedule. I hadn't responded yet, but I would. Because forgiveness, like success, is a choice you make not for other people, but for yourself. Victoria had spent 2 years trying to write my story for me, casting me as the struggling sister who needed tough love and realistic expectations. But I'd written my own ending, one where the woman everyone doubted built something that changed entire industries. And the best part? This wasn't actually the ending at all. It was just the beginning of what became possible when you stopped. Listening to people who confuse their fears with your limitations. Tomorrow, I'll keep building. Because that's what you do when you've learned that your potential is infinite and other people's opinions are just noise. The broke loser sister had become a millionaire entrepreneur. But more importantly, she'd become someone who understood that she'd always had the power to define her own worth. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.